In this video, I'm going to install and run Android Studio on a brand new computer with nothing else installed on it except for the core Windows software. This is a brand new laptop I just got the other day. It doesn't have Java on it yet or anything like that. So let's jump right in. First of all, I simply do a Google search for Android Studio and click on the first link. Now, I will tell you, I'm probably going to download an alpha or beta release of version 2, the newest version. But honestly, these instructions are subject to change. This is probably the fifth or sixth video I've ever made on downloading an Android development environment because they are subject to change. So one thing I'll strongly encourage you to do if you're watching this video is to take a look at the instructions on developer.android.com. Use those first. They might differ from what I have here, so if that's the case, then use those first. In any case, I'm going to go to download and I'm going to take a look at system requirements, make sure I meet the requirements. So Windows 8.7 Vista, well, I'm on Windows 10. I assume that's going to work as well. 4 GB of RAM, no problem. Hard disk space is fine. 1 GB for SDK, emulator, images, and caches. You will need space, honestly. I've installed Android Studio on numerous computers, and really the different development versions, or in other words, as we call them, Lollipop and KitKat, all those versions, each one of those takes up a bit of space on your hard drive. So do be cautious. Don't rush to download everything. Just get what you need. Screen resolution's fine. Okay, here's the one we need though, Java Development Kit 7. So that I'm going to need to download separately, which I'll do in just a moment. The last item talks about Intel VTX and the basically the virtual machine emulators or the virtual machine software capabilities of your device. I will stress this is important. If you have virtualization set up properly on your machine, your emulator that runs the Android program that you're developing will run much faster. I have a separate video that discusses that. It's called Intel Haxm, HAXM, or something like that on my YouTube channel. I won't cover that here because I have that already in a separate video, but the hardware acceleration for the virtual machines definitely going to be a big time saver if you're doing Android development. Okay, Java Development Kit 7, and make sure you get the Java Development Kit, not the Java Runtime. So I'm just going to put JDK 7 download, and let's see what we get. Okay, so we go to Oracle, which is what I would expect, is that's where the Oracle keeps its development kits for Java. And I want Java SE Development Kit 7. Yeah, that's fine. Lots of things to choose from here, which isn't very user friendly, but nonetheless, of course, read the entire license agreement and then accept it. I'm on Windows 64-bit, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this one. Just make absolutely sure Java SE Development Kit 7U79. That satisfies the requirement. That's JDK 7. Release 79, so that'll satisfy the requirement. I'm going to go ahead and click, and we'll let this download. That'll take a moment, so I'll go ahead and pause the video as that downloads. Meanwhile, while that's downloading, I'll get started on my Android Studio download as well. So I've reviewed the system requirements. I'm going to click download Android Studio. Terms and conditions, of course, read them all word for word. Okay, yep. I have read and agreed with the terms and conditions. Download Android Studio. There's no charge for this, so you don't have to enter a credit card or anything like that. So we'll go ahead and let both of these download. Again, that will take a few moments. So at this point, both have downloaded. The JDK downloaded in a few minutes. Android Studio took quite a while because it's about a 1.1 gig, so it's a fairly large program. Now we need to install the JDK first. If we do not, here's what's going to happen. I've already started the Android Studio installer. I choose next, and it tells me, well, I can't find a JDK on your system. Please browse to it if you want to, or it gives us an option here where we can just download it right here. That works just as well. Either way is fine, and you see that it has selected JDK 7U67 Windows x64 for 64-bit Windows. So that's very similar to the one that I chose. I'll go ahead and install mine, and then we'll come back and we'll install Android Studio in a minute. So yes, to see mine's JDK 7U79. So just maybe a few revisions newer, but still a completely valid JDK 7. So I'm going to click on this, and it brings up a little modal dialog there. And I'll go ahead and choose Next. Um, this installation directory is fine, but to be honest with you, I use Java for a lot of things, and I like something that's a little bit closer to the C drive because I periodically will need to go to the command line. So I'm just going to install it in C JDK 170_79. I could probably honestly even just chop off that 79 because this is likely the only JDK version 7 I'll install on this computer. So go ahead and choose OK. That's fine, and we'll let it go. And again, I'll pause through the boring parts. The JRE again, this is fine for most people. I, though, might want to use this directly on the command line, and if so, it's a little bit easier if I put it directly in C root. But again, for you, you could leave it at the default. That would be just fine. We'll let this go. Now, by the way, why did I have to install two? You notice there's a JDK and a JRE. JDK is the Java Development Kit, which allows me to write and compile Java software. The JRE is the Java Runtime Environment, which allows me to run Java software. So we'll go ahead and choose Close. And now I'm going to click on my Android Studio installer once again. And this time either it will find Java for me automatically, or it will at least prompt me on where to put it, where I put it. So next, okay, you see this time we try again, and it has correctly identified where I installed Java. So we're good. We didn't get the little prompt screen we did before. Choose next. Of course, read the entire license agreement in depth, and then choose I agree. Here again, I could put these in. Yeah, I kind of prefer. I don't like spaces in folder names for using them on the command line. So I tend to put my stuff in C programs, but the default path is just fine. Android SDK, I'm not really keen on where it is here either. I'm going to put that in C programs, well, because that'll put it in the same directory as that. That'll be fine. I'll just put it in C programs again, Android SDK. Again, this is just so I can easily find it on the command line. Leave it at the default if you prefer, that's just fine. Go ahead and choose Next and Install, and we'll let it go. Finally, it shows the installation complete, so I'm going to choose Next and Finish and start Android Studio. Okay. In this case, this is a fresh computer, so I don't have any settings I wish to import. We'll just go ahead and let it go at the default. It's downloading the latest SDK, which at the time of this recording is 6.0 API 23. Depending on where you're targeting your app, what version you're targeting it to, you might need to download some additional SDKs. For example, if at a minimum you'll support 4.4.2 or KitKat, you'll need to download that SDK as well. Depending on your computer, internet connection, so on and so forth, that will take some time, and you'll need to do it in the SDK manager, which will be available once we have Android Studio installed. So plan on a little wait for this time as well. I'll go ahead and pause the video as it downloads. Now, once it's finished downloading, we get a confirmation of everything that it has downloaded. One thing to keep in mind is there's several things going on here. First, we have Android Studio. Android Studio is a framework that integrates several things together that we use to write our applications. One is the Java Development Kit that we saw earlier. Second is the Android Studio IDE, which is based on IntelliJ IDEA. And then finally, we have the different Android platform versions where we need separate SDKs and separate emulators for those. So it has just downloaded and installed the latest. Assuming that more versions come after this, we'll be able to use the same Android Studio IDE and simply upgrade the underlying Android software development kit for the Android versions that come after 6.0. So I'll go ahead now and choose Finish. And it looks like everything's good because it's prompting us to start a new Android project. Let's go ahead and do that just to make sure everything's running. Okay, and we'll call this first application. And we'll go ahead and leave the defaults. Typically, I wouldn't do that. Well, for instance, I might say uc.edu.jonesbr.first application. And you see the uc.edu, or actually it should be edu.uc. That's our domain name in reverse. And then JonesBR is a unique identifier for me within that domain. I'll go ahead and choose next. Uh, Minimum Android 15 is fine. I could potentially do 23. We'll go ahead and say next again. Let's start with empty activity, which is the simplest one. And again, we'll leave it at the defaults for now. I wouldn't do that in a real application, but if we just want to test things out, we'll go ahead and leave it at the default. And we'll let it build. And I choose close. And we'll give it a few more moments. Now it takes a few moments to build, but we do see now that I have, under the Android view here, I have a module called App. And we see also that module name is up above, along with the play and debug tools. So at this point, I could choose debug and choose OK. And this will start up an emulator, although we see that this one requires Haxum. I have a separate video on how to install Haxum. So yes, I won't cover that again here because I have a separate video that will do that. But nonetheless, at this point, we have an application that will build, and we could run it in a different emulator. We could run it in an emulator that doesn't use that Haxum accelerator. Compile, we have no compile errors. Everything looks good. There are no red lines or anything like that. So at this point, we'll call this a successful installation of Android Studio. I have the video that talks about Haxum acceleration. I also have a video that talks about setting up an emulator, and I have a video that talks about your first Android app. So I have several different videos that you can watch from here, but this video at least gets you prepared with that baseline to continue on with the other videos. I look forward to seeing you in those. Thank you.